Boy, I'll tell you, my detractors are just going to hate this video. Too theatric. Steve Stanek here, the Dusty Keratometer. Today we're talking eye care of prisoners. Just a few interesting stories, hopefully, and some thoughtful comments. I think I'm at the Pennsylvania College of Optometry when I went there in 1980 through 1984. They had us rotate through the prison. I think it was called the Office of External Education. And they would go on sometimes home visits, visiting homebound patients, nursing homes, and also the prison. So there was this classmate of mine, and I used to study with her. We studied a lot together. And she was very, very attractive. On a scale of 1 to 10, she was a 12. So she went to the prison. And I don't know what they said to her. Now think about it. These poor guys have been incarcerated for whatever, months, days, years. And this very attractive, personable female shows up to check their eyes. I don't know what they said to her or what transpired, but she was shaken up. She told me she was so rattled that on the way home she had to stop off at a bar and have a couple drinks. So my first external ed assignment was, I think it was a nursing home, and I didn't particularly enjoy that. So I told my friend, I said, look, why don't we do this? When you get to prison, I'll go to the prison for you, and when I get nursing homes or home visits, you can go for me. And the school didn't really care. They just wanted somebody to show up. This woman was not a shrinking violet, I got to tell you. She's probably one of the most strong-willed women I know. She knew exactly what she wanted to do. She wanted to become a great optometrist, and she did so. And don't get the wrong idea about her. I highly respect her. She's in a very, very successful practice today and doing quite well. So I take my hat off to her sense of rigor and discipline. Quite exceptional. So I ended up going to the prison a lot, and it was interesting. The first time, I'll never forget, it was raining. I drove up, parked the car, and had to go through this fence, and there was a double fence there with a dog, a German Shepherd, sitting there in the rain. His coat was soaked, and he was just sitting there, and it was kind of interesting. You're like, wow. And so you go through the fence, go inside the prison, and had to go through security. And so he had me open my briefcase. And I don't think the guard looked very hard. His comments were, "Oh, wow, nice sandwich." I'd made a sandwich to take with me. It was in a plastic baggie. So I went on in and examined the inmates. Now, the interesting thing was all of these patients were there voluntarily. Nobody was there against their will. And the thing that struck me is out of maybe 10 patients, 9 of them would be hyperopic. And some of them would be very hyperopic, like 6 diopters, which kind of makes you think, I mean, is there causality here? Are these guys here because they did poorly in school? You know, you could just imagine a kid from a poor background being a 6 diopter hyperop, you know, low-income family, or maybe a single mom family, and you know, the mother assumes the kid can see. He can see fine far away, but reading would be a real chore for him. Studying would be tough. He probably wouldn't want to study, like to study. And then maybe he starts cutting class and starts getting in trouble, you know, starts maybe breaking into cars or something like that. So that's kind of an interesting philosophy, you know. You wonder if the refractive error is what put them there. I know there have been studies done on papers published regarding refractive error in prisoners and such. And I read one, it was from like 1906. It was an ophthalmology journal, and the author said that he always assumed that prisoners had that prisoners had good vision, because they'd have to have good vision in order to pick pockets and things like that, which is kind of interesting. But it makes you think, you know. I mean, the schools have screenings for vision, but, you know, maybe some slip through. You have to applaud the JCs and the Lions Club for their aggressive stance on vision screening and eye care for people. The other possibility could be, of course, that since these guys were incarcerated and they were all there voluntarily, maybe they just got their eyes checked out of boredom. In the civilian world, in the regular practice, the myopes tend to show up. Let's face it, they can't see far away, so they come in for an eye exam. A hyperope can do pretty well unless they're approaching presbyopia or so hyperopic that they can't have enough reserves. Interesting to think about, interesting to speculate. Another interesting thing about the prison was the prison chaplain would come and give these guys Bibles. And so here they are, they're in dim light, they're trying to read a poorly printed Bible, and they're getting these massive frontal headaches from attempting to read. So you put them behind the phoropter and you find they're 6 diopters hyperopic, and then the quandary becomes, well, how much do you give them? You can't give them the whole 6 diopters. They have to cut it back somewhat and have them adjust to it. I had very mixed feelings about it. Most of these guys are no doubt in there for having broken the rules. I was never comfortable asking them what they did to cause them to be incarcerated. Some of my classmates asked every one of them what they were in for. I felt it wasn't really any of my business. Now, one time I had a guy volunteer. This wasn't too hard to figure out. He was bragging that in the civilian world he had his own business installing burglar alarms. So you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out what he was probably in for. So after PCO, I did an externship at Quantico, Virginia, and that's a Marine Corps base. The Marines are very highly disciplined and very motivated. And when I got there were 3 students from another school and just me from PCO. So the other school was on either a quarter system or semester system, different than ours, and so those students were there for a few months, then they left, and they were replaced by some new students. Well, the preceptor and I really got along well. I think he kind of liked me. I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken, but he didn't seem to care for this new batch of 3 students from the other school. I usually got there at about 7:10, and so I go in, and the preceptor's there. There were 3 guys in, I believe the Marine Corps calls them utility uniforms. We call them fatigues in the Army, BDUs in the Air Force. And they were all sitting right together. So I went up to the preceptor. He was behind the desk, and he had a chart. And he said to me, "We've got this prisoner from the brig that needs an eye exam." And he said, I'm not going to have you see him. You're not going to see him. And I told him, I said, "Look, I've seen lots of prisoners. It's no big deal. I mean, whatever you want." And he said, "Well, you're not seeing him. I'm going to let the other guys see him." So we sat there for a while. And then, so sure enough, a little while later, one of the other students came in, and the preceptor handed him the record and didn't say anything. He just handed him the record. And so the student's looking at the record. He's flipping through the record, trying to get some information and stuff in the waiting room. And he walks out to the middle of the waiting room, and he calls the patient's name. And simultaneously, all 3 of these guys stand up together. And the student was kind of shocked, and he said to them, well, you don't all 3 have to come. And the nearest guard said to him, "Yes, we do." And then the student looked down and saw that the patient in the middle was in handcuffs and leg irons. And so he was a little bit shocked, and he said, "Oh, okay, well, let's go back." That's kind of funny. Now, when I came to Eglin Air Force Base, they used to have a minimum security prison right on the base. And these guys would run around in khaki uniforms. They had different jobs, mainly cutting the grass and doing lawns care, stuff like that. And when you in-processed the base, they gave you a briefing and they told you about this. And you had to be careful. You really couldn't talk to them unless it was an emergency. they warned that they may try to get us to mail a letter for them, and by mailing a letter for them, that would of course circumvent the prison censors. And they warned that these guys are all manipulators, and they might say they got you to mail a letter, then the next week they might ask for something else. They might say, I can get you in trouble for having mailed that letter. Now I want you to bring me a cell phone or something like that. So these guys were all manipulators. But we had a guy, he'd come one day a week in the morning, and he would cut our grass. He was kind of a heavy set guy, and he would cut our grass with a ride-on lawnmower. And sometimes the grass didn't need cutting. He just went through the motions. He drove the mower over the grass, and it would take him about 20 minutes, half hour. And then he would sit there on the mower for about an hour and a half in the shade under the trees, waiting for the truck to come pick him up to go to lunch. Now, the technicians and I used to joke, if we ever get convicted of a crime, Eglin Federal Prison was where we wanted to go. But I realize I'm sure it's not all hunky-dory. I'm sure back at the prison it was probably a very difficult existence. But I don't cut my grass with a ride-on mower. One thing you never do is wear a conventional tie at the prison. You always wear a clip-on, because that way there's less chance they're going to choke you to death. Oh, one time I was doing direct ophthalmoscopy on an inmate at the Philadelphia Detention Center, and he smiled as I was doing direct ophthalmoscopy. And I was trying to make conversation, diffuse the situation. I said, it's a little bit bright, isn't it? And the inmate said to me, it reminds me of some bad dreams I've had. And I felt like I almost said, hey, listen, if anything I do during the course of this eye exam upsets you, just let me know and I'll stop. Yeah, in Philadelphia, they had the Philadelphia Detention Center, and right next door they had a state penitentiary, and then next door they had a federal penitentiary. So if any inmate needed their eyes checked, they would just transfer them to the detention center, and we would see them. We would provide their eye exams for them. I checked, and apparently now, when I got there in 1980, and prior, I think a few years prior, they only made the male students go to the detention center. And then when I got there, or maybe it was a year before or so, they said, well, if the men can go, the women can go too. So everybody went. My class was maybe 25% female. And then I just found out that they've stopped going. For the safety of the students, they no longer go to the detention center. I'm not sure how I feel about that. Maybe back in the 80s, the PCO wasn't that concerned with the safety of the students. I don't know, whatever. But it was certainly an interesting experience. I learned. It was eventful, as some people say, and just doing my job, Hey, so. Now, where did I put those handcuff keys?